And it's an honor to be here today with our superintendent of schools, Dr. Miyashiro, who's going to open us in talking about the culture shift within Cajon Valley schools. I'll be sharing some of our practice work, and really I see it as an opportunity for you to step into our schools and see what's happening in our classrooms through hearing the voices of children as well as teachers this morning. And then you'll have an opportunity to hear from Dr. Ian Martin, who's been working on our research, who's been an incredible partner along this journey. And we thank you very much, Dr. Bluestein, as well for your support. So with that, if Dr. Miyashiro's on, we'd love to hear from him. I don't see his image yet, but I know that he was on earlier for a check. Are you there, Dr. Miyashiro?
I'm here. Good morning. How are you?
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Well, we've been consumers from OECD research and media for such a long time. It's great to contribute here. I want to start by sharing some sins of the past. The first part of my career, I spent chasing test scores and PISA, and in the US, it's called No Child Left Behind, but we did very well. I think that even though the US lagged behind most developed countries by PISA results, my schools by test scores would have done very well. But our teachers would tell you that our kids did well on test scores, but their outcomes didn't change. They were still going into gangs, getting pregnant in high school in a very low income community, not going on to post-secondary, and certainly not finding gainful employment in the world of work. And so flash forward into Cajon Valley, we started to think about school differently. And how do we close the gap between education and the world of work? We couldn't do this without the support of our governing board. These are our 5 elected officials that support the work that we do and have sanctioned the work for us to be here with you today. So we're grateful for them. And our vision, this is where we sit and meet on a weekly basis, is happy kids and healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. That came from years of listening and leaning into our parents, to our students, and mostly our community about what we want for our community at large. And we say happiness, sounds fluffy, but we just describe happy kids as self-aware. They know who they are, their strengths, interests, and values. Self-esteem, the esteem that comes from the teachers and the people in the community saying that who you are is just the right person. And then self-efficacy belief, the belief that they can do with their skills what they want to do in the world of work. Healthy relationships with their peers, but also the adults, and then the community at large. And you'll see some of that with Ian and Ed. And the last part is elusive in the United States. There isn't a lot of talk about the global economy or the students once they leave high school. If you look at metrics in the US education system, it's all about getting kids out. Let's get them out of high school, graduation rate. Let's get them out of college, graduation rate. And in the US, we have 1.8 trillion in outstanding student loan debt, meaning the successful ones aren't finding gainful employment. So our second president, John Adams, said there ought to be 2 educations, one to teach kids how to live and how to make a living. And we know that to be the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family, our kids are going to need to have a job, but not just a job, gainful employment. We started the work by transitioning to digital. In 2014, we provided every student and teacher a laptop for their learning and taught them how to use blended and personalized learning to change the environment from a teacher-centric to a student-centric environment, leveraging the powers of modern technology into the classroom. From then, we started to think about preparing our teachers, not just for the digital future, but to prepare our kids for the world of work. And I'll finish by sharing the conversations that I had with the Navy admirals, the Air Force captains, our police chief, our fire chief, our city manager, city council. I love the talks before us that talked about the community-wide ecosystem. In El Cajon, our city leaders told us, stop stigmatizing the most important work in the country. And that hit home. We have real estate developers, we have journeymen, we have lots of skilled labor and opportunities for really lucrative careers right here in our community that kids don't learn anything about in the schools. And why are we stigmatizing that? Why aren't we showing kids what they can do to earn a living from kindergarten? And then with that work, we met Ed. I met Ed about 5 years ago when he was at Qualcomm. He created a system called the World of Work at his company. It was a one-day experience. Hired the University of San Diego, where Ian Martin came on board, and a curriculum development company to start building a modern curriculum where all kids learn computer science, build healthy relationships with their peers and the adults, learn to give a TED Talk on stage starting in kindergarten, and then begin to expand their understanding of themselves as it relates to the world of work, starting in kindergarten all the way through post-secondary. And Ed, would you take it away?
Thank you so much, Dr. Miyashiro. Without Dr. Miyashiro's culture and the work of the board and our community, this work would not be possible. And I pulled this quote from Andreas Schleicher from the Drawing the Futures research. And I love how he uses the word children, because so often we don't hear the word children. And he was bringing this forward. I felt like this was a call to action from Andreas. And so when I left working and hiring talent, I spent most of my career hiring talent, I wondered why so many of the adults that I would experience through this process were broken, that had never experienced career development, that didn't know how to manage their careers. So the question in my mind was, how do we start doing this earlier? And so I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Ian Martin. And after the career counseling practice that we had started in the corporate world, he started bringing me into the fold around career theories and really understanding, although I had used the Myers-Briggs type indicator and the strong interest inventory and many of the tools in HR, applying it in such a new and interesting way to focus on this work in the primary grades was something that Dr. Miyashiro, the community, was asking for. And so we designed a theory of action and a theory of change that really drove this work, and specifically grounding in this idea of this underutilized body of knowledge on pre-K 16 career development. And it's why this work is so important and why we're so appreciative to Dr. Mann and the team at OECD for bringing the data forward. I think what we landed on more than anything was that career development is a human process. And for so long, we've been sending kids into a test and tell process where they take assessments and on the other side, they get results. And this is who you're going to be one day. And I always loved how Dr. Ian Martin would say that any assessment, no matter how good, is only as good as its interpretation. And how often I had seen practitioners not having conversations with students, not having conversations with adults. It was a test and tell process. And in our work, we needed to bring this forward in a very human process. And who are the humans that are most connected to young people? They're teachers. They have 180 days to develop a relationship with the child. And yet they know almost nothing about vocational psychology, about building occupational identities, about the language around possible selves. They don't know about zip code destiny. They don't understand the challenges that young people are facing later on in the pipeline. And I was seeing it. I was hiring those people. And so with Dr. Ian Martin and the team, we began to design a career development framework for every child, every grade, and every year. And a belief that every child should gain a level of self-awareness around their strengths, interests, and values. And they should have the opportunity to explore both academic and career opportunities. We've heard how does someone aspire to a career they don't know exists? How can you be that which you cannot see? So it's built into our model, into our framework. And as you just saw the TED Ed curriculum, that our students starting at a very early age are beginning to tell their unique story, not someone else's story, not a story to get you through the interview, but their story, their unique story about who they are and who they want to become. They're building an agentic mindset so that we can really provide agentic striving or activate agentic striving and career choice privilege, as Dr. Bluestein talks about. So that grounded framework, that mission of me, that hope for possible selves is the foundation. And it's experienced in our classrooms through 4 levels of integration. It must be simple, it must be dynamic, and must be flexible. So our children have the opportunity to explore careers, to simulate, have as-if experiences, to meet professionals, ideally someone who looks like them in person or virtual. We've had more than 100,000 live industry chats using virtual technology. We won't talk about that today. And then 4th, the opportunity for demonstrations of learning or practice or internships or mentorships. Wherever it is at the life cycle of the child, they have this opportunity for experiences. And so through our work, and we're going to talk about the RIASEC, we're going to talk about how we integrate this into our classrooms. You're going to get to see it. It is agentic. It's not fixed or deterministic. And we do ensure that children are not foreclosing too early on their interests. We want to ensure that every child, every grade, every year has an experience around careers in each of the RIASEC theme areas. It's not so important to focus on the job itself. It's not about the what as much as it is about the who. When you bring the who and the what together, children begin to see themselves in the world of work. They get to understand how do my interests, how do my strengths, how do my values align to the people who do the jobs in our community. And that builds dignity in all work. And that begins to share with children that all work matters. So I'm sure that all of you know what the RIASEC is. Thank you, Dr. Holland, for your work from many years ago, the most widely adopted theoretical framework of interests. I'll never forget in 2013, Dr. Mark Savickas at the commencement of an NCDA conference said, the self that a person makes themselves into is a function of language. If you don't have a word for it, you don't have it. And in our community, a 2-gen strategy with parents, with teachers, with students, with our businesses, which we won't share today, we're building a common language of career, a common language of self that everyone can speak, no matter who you are. And we know the research, you know the research, and even if there's only a moderate correlation between interests and these elements that you see here, I'm willing to accept moderate and build it to exceptional connections. And that's some of the work that we'll see. Now, I'm sure that you're wondering, well, what does this actually sound like? What do kids sound like when they talk about the RIASEC? Let me show you an example of one of our live industry chats where our students are coming in from different classrooms virtually to meet one of the master mechanics. And you'll see what happens when the moderator gets a question that you're going to be familiar with.
Question here. I have no idea what it means, but I'm going to guess that you do. What are your RIASEC letters?
I don't know. You got me on that one. Where is that at?
Where is it? RIASEC letters. I spelled it out. They're calling it RIASEC letters.
RIASEC letters.
What's the, we have to take the test. That's what it is.
I can explain what RIASEC means. I can explain what RIASEC means.
All right, go for it.
Okay.
I think what RIASEC means more so is like, are you like a more social person, investigative person, realistic, artistic, conventional, enterprising?
So Stuart, a 4th grader from Rios Elementary, stepped up as all the different classrooms around the district were watching this live industry chat, realistic, Mark Alford, master mechanic, and stepped forward to be able to share. He wanted to share what he thinks the RIASEC is. And so this language that Dr. Savickas was talking about may not have been the RIASEC, but in our community, it is the RIASEC. And we have program facilitators who have come out of the classroom, have learned the language, have learned how to integrate career development. We've worked together to strategize and integrate this work with Dr. Martin and others. And so when you come to our schools, you see that our schools look very different. The RIASEC is visible, it's prominent, it's around, and we've created tools to be able to make it possible for teachers to have these conversations in the classroom, opportunities for students to have agency in describing themselves through the lens of the RIASEC. And whether they're self-reporting their themes, because we do self-report with students, we don't test them in the early grades, as you may traditionally believe that and know that it's done. They might start seeing anchor charts in classrooms that show the veterinarian connected to the investigative theme. You see children wanting to talk about their interest themes to other professionals that are coming in the classroom, like you see in the bottom right. And you also see the connection to novel study in other areas. So this idea of career development in the instructional core is a human process. We see it deployed through guided language acquisition strategies, Socratic discussions, back to PBL and work-based learning. It's not just the what, it's the who, and the who we understand through the lens of Holland. It also comes to life through blended learning, which is what we practice here. It's small group, it's whole group, it's digital, it's non-digital, but I just want to bring back this idea that it's not fixed, it's not deterministic, and the reality is it's the adults who think that, it's not the children. Because the children know that I'm feeling realistic and social today, and next week I might be enterprising and conventional. They're testing and trying, they're practicing, they know that it's fluid and dynamic. And just like Dr. McElveen and Dr. Para have written about the multidimensionality of constructs. So the credit goes to our teachers who have learned how to integrate this into their classrooms. It's not another thing because it's part of the thing that they're doing already. It's part of the SEL that they're bringing to the classroom. So in this case, Ms. Monroy is talking about gender stereotypes as it relates to teachers, the male teacher versus the female teacher, She's pulling in some of Gottfridson's research because we've talked about that, and that's what we've trained. And so you see it in kindergarten, and you see the voice around kindergarten. As this student teacher tweeted last week, when the kids beg you to work on RIASEC all times of the day, hashtag they love it. They love it because they're building their voice. They're building their choice around their interests. No one's locking them in to this process. And so you start to hear young people talking about their RIASEC themes.
Hi, my RIASEC code is ACS. I'm artistic when I paint, use my imagination, draw, and create things. I'm conventional when I learn also because I like math and numbers, and when I sort things. I am social when I help and be kind. Thank you for watching. Bye.
I'm sure most of you know the RIASEC, so you'll be impressed by the images that you see there and the correlation. But again, self-reporting happens all the time. It's frequently happening in classrooms. So a child that might identify AIC has another opportunity through what they're doing, the lessons they're learning, to maybe select ACS. Whatever it is, there's no right or wrong. And when students begin to build this language as we move from these earlier grades into, say, a third grade class, you start to hear messages like this one.
I like the RIASEC because I love the world of work and everything, and I like to discover all my jobs and my personality. And then when I'm older, I get to have like a life to live, maybe a family, a pet, a house, a new place.
So maybe I'll have a life to live, or a family, or a new place. They're seeing their future hoped for possible selves. So there's so many ways to integrate this work in the classroom, whether it's within a scope and sequence. Again, we know what the what is. We have to cover the standards in science, the birth of rocks. We know what the reading's going to be. Maybe it's through mystery science, but let's talk about the who. It's the park naturalist. What are the RIASEC themes, et cetera? And let's do the project. Let's have the experience. And when we do that, when teachers understand how to do that, they start building groupings of students in classrooms. They start building heterogeneous groupings like Mr. Saffer.
Okay. Can anyone tell Mr. Howard, how did we put our groups together way back when? Remember when I had you guys group up? So there was some choice involved. Okay. Kai, how did we choose our groups?
We showed our RIASEC letters, and it couldn't be this, and we had to pick groups that didn't have the same first letter.
Exactly. So there was choice in picking the groups, but they all knew their top RIASEC code. So I just asked them to choose one or two other partners where they had a different top RIASEC code. So we got some different variety.
So that variety and that learning comes through lots of different opportunities. We might put a character study in a novel, and then we ask, well, let's pick a topic from the novel and determine how we can apply it to the RIASEC. It's so simple, it makes sense to children, but it's complex enough that teachers can unpack this in the classroom, like we'll see Mr. Coleman unpacking it here.
Let's warm up discussion. We're going to talk about some of the RIASEC themes in Lawn Boy. We're going to work on our career vocabulary. Okay. Then we're going to do the difference between, we're going to talk about the difference between a field and an occupation that came up recently. We've been discussing that. Pretty awesome. Then we're going to, like I said, the theme park engineer, which is going to be about 2 weeks long. Okay. You're going to be learning about what they do. You're going to be practicing what they do, which is multidimensional. What I mean by that is there's several dimensions or things that they do in their job. Okay. And it covers pretty much every theme in the RIASEC. Some of you.
So those are the types of experiences that our students are having. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ian Martin to talk through some of the research. But as you can see, it's agentic, experiential, it's integrated. It's not another thing. It's part of the things that teachers are doing in classrooms. Thank you. Dr. Martin?
Yeah, thank you very much. As you might imagine, it's pretty challenging to try to keep up with the pace of innovation within the district. It's like with these little ideas that have just really morphed into amazing things. So being along for this ride has been really incredible. We tried to look at resources and tried to be as systematic as possible when thinking about how to document these innovations. And so we started with some survey research, and we wanted to try to think about, longitudinally, if there'd be some evidence to track there. And so we had some good results. We focused on middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th, related to career decision-making, self-efficacy, possible selves, and the possible selves questionnaire, as well as the sources of self-efficacy, and then a teacher implementation survey to kind of track how teachers were responding to the world of work. So we can move on here. We can see here that COVID, of course, interrupted our plans, and so we had to pivot, and I'll talk about that in a second. For the next one.
Yep.
So when we look at, this is year 2, and we're seeing that it's interesting to see how high self-efficacy is in the district, but yet mastery, which we also would call performance on a lot of different assessments, but you can see that that's one of the lower areas. And it's interesting because we know that performance really drives a lot of self-efficacy beliefs. And so seeing that students are getting such high self-efficacy without a lot of performance, then it's just something that's of note. And we want to start building in more and more of these hands-on experiences so that they can maybe reflect more on performance moving forward. We can go on to the next one. And we look at possible selves. We're looking at the hoped for and feared. Oh, kind of sorry. There. Sorry. We're just collecting written in responses, and we're looking at frequencies here. But it's always nice to kind of see what students are selecting. And so you can see that there's still some very high status positions, but then we're also kind of venturing off into other areas with artist and teacher. And so being able to see kind of what students are responding to in their possible selves is pretty cool. Let's go on to the next one. And then here's specificity within possible selves. And this is just a huge leap in specificity in just between 1 and 2 years. The first year was after 1 year of exposure to the world of work. And then year 2 would be after the 2 years. So, or it would actually be 3 total. And so this is just, again, when we look at possible selves, seeing that a student can really visualize and kind of fill in the gaps for a possible future is really exciting. So let's go on to the teacher piece. All right, so right away we're seeing that teachers are engaged in this work, and that's I think really was a big surprise to us. We thought maybe there could be some pushback, or they might see it as kind of extra. And so seeing just how many teachers are responding positively to the work is really, really encouraging. Right, let's go on to the next one. And again, they're integrating it into their actual work and curriculum at the upper end of that percentage and seeing increases over time. What I want to talk about here is that now we're looking at it, like you just saw with the videos, we're looking at the pivot for COVID is to focus on what teachers are actually doing. And so we're doing case studies, looking at videos, as well as interviewing 12 exemplary teachers. And what we're finding there is just how they're using Riosec in particular as kind of this strengths-based process for differentiating curriculum and differentiating material for students. And it's really fascinating to see how teachers are really engaging in the work and adapting the classroom experiences to better fit students. And we definitely saw that in some of the videos, and we're seeing it in those exemplary teachers as well. So very exciting stuff, and really difficult to keep up with, but it's been wonderful. So pass it over back to you, Ed.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I think I appreciate you sharing and your work. It's been incredible to learn from you and be able to apply a lot of the things that have been on your mind, and Dr. Miyashiro being able to do this work with and for him and serve children, families, and community. It's been pretty awesome. There's some of the teachers that that we were working with today. They're amazing. Teachers are incredible. So with that, I mean, I can share a final video, or we're happy to take questions, whatever's best for you, Dr. Mann, Dr. Bluestein, team.